What do you think is our greatest advantage as humans? It's not our strength because we don't have fangs or claws. It's not our speed. We can't run as fast as four-legged animals. It's probably not even our intelligence. We are the smartest, but dolphins are the smartest in the seas, and they don't rule the oceans. It's our ability to organize, because while we are weak as individuals, we are strong as a group. And that is our competitive advantage, and that's what we've done throughout the course of human civilization. So imagine you were a hunter-gatherer. You would use flint arrowheads and spears to hunt woolly mammoths in squads. Imagine you were a Neolithic farmer. You were in Samaria, and you used writing to coordinate across time and distances to create shared values so that you could cooperate even if you didn't know everyone. Imagine you were an Indian craftsman. You created Shrenis, the first guild, so you could speak with one voice against the state, creating corporate personhood. And imagine you were a Dutch merchant in the 17th century. You created joint stock companies so you could raise enormous amounts of capital, separating manager and investor with limited liability and creating joint stock exchanges to create the first large-scale private organizations like the Dutch East India Company. And these all share a similarity, which is that they are all built on trust. That's the foundation. So the issue is that as we grow as a society, we have amazing technologies in the 21st century. They let us communicate across vast distances instantly. We use computers and artificial intelligence, and we do things at a scale never before seen in society and in human history. And the issue is that the more we rely on trust at scale, the more we're relying on a foundation that didn't evolve for the level of scale we're working at. And so this makes our institutions more and more brittle. And that means when they break in ever bigger ways. FTX is a great example. And it's no coincidence that the biggest catastrophes happen where trust is at the root of the fall, whether it's FTX or Madoff or the intermediaries during the great financial crisis. Trust is brittle, and it's holding us back. Now, the problem is that as complexity grows, if we don't evolve and adapt, societies tend to either succeed or they collapse. And that's why we need a new form of human organization, and that is DAOs. So what is a DAO? It's surprisingly hard to define, and that's probably partially because there's tension in the definition itself, right? Like, what is decentralized grammatically modified? Does it mean the organization is decentralized with no single centralized person controlling it? Or does it mean the code that defines the rules of the organization is decentralized on decentralized servers on the blockchain? It's actually ambiguous, so no surprise there's confusion. And it doesn't help that DAOs are actually quite diverse, right? Some are very centralized, like an investment syndicate where a few people make a decision. Some are extremely decentralized, like Bitcoin. Some have very autonomous rules, like Bitcoin. And some have very manual rules, like an investment syndicate with a multi-sig, where a few people just, decide when to send money. And it also doesn't help that thought leaders tend to describe DAOs instead of define them. Right? I think it was Koopa Trooper who wrote, internet communities with a shared cap table and a bank account are DAOs. But what if you don't have a treasury or a token? Is a group of artists who organize themselves on the blockchain not a DAO? I don't think so. And I believe Bankless wrote digitally native communities that center around a shared mission or DAOs. But we'd probably define World of Warcraft that way, and I don't think any of us think World of Warcraft is a DAO. So I'll propose a definition, which is a DAO is an organization whose governing rules, like their bylaws, and membership can be set forth in code on the blockchain, like smart contracts and tokens, rather than in written contracts. And the reason this is useful is because it's trustless. You don't need to trust another person in order for these rules to execute and be enforced, right? And so, like, why does this even matter? Why do we need DAOs, right? With a definition like this, it becomes a little more clear. So one is ease of operation, right? Like, imagine you want to spin up a syndicate in a week to take advantage of a distressed asset like real estate or a fast-moving angel deal or, perhaps a constitution, right? Unless you have enormous money and influence, no law firm will turn the docs that fast. No accounting firm will track thousands of investors that fast. No bank will onboard you that fast, so you're stuck. But with rules on the blockchain, you can copy, paste, configure, and do it all permissionlessly. And so it's just easier to do things like spin up a syndicate, so you're unstuck, right? Compliance also can be really important, right? I mean, today, if you want to make sure no one sends money, you kind of have to trust them, right? But if it's in a multi-sig, you can actually enforce voting and you can trace money with auditability. And so it's actually just more compliant. So think about if you're in Somalia or Syria or Venezuela, the 3 worst performers on the rule of law index, right? You can't do business there, right? Because you can't trust the managers not to run off with the money. You can't trust banks because corruption is endemic. Contract enforcement requires courts, requires institutions. But with DAOs and code on the blockchain, you can enforce these rules even when there's no rule of law. And it's not just there, it's also in the US. Imagine you get into a contract dispute with Google. What are you gonna do? Sue them? No, they'll bury you, right? And so DAOs can enforce a level playing field even when there's big power asymmetries. And it also enables new organizational structures. Imagine you're an open source developer. The reason you like contributing is because there's no one person in charge. But how do you decide on a product roadmap or monetize without a chief revenue officer? Well, you can have rules on the blockchain, and so it enables new forms of cooperation. And so this definition enables us to answer a lot of the questions that skeptics pose to us much more easily, right? What is a DAO? Well, it's like a company, but the bylaws are on the blockchain. How did DAOs start? Well, in 2016, the DAO was a venture fund, though short-lived. What are DAOs used for? Well, anything a corporation could be used for, from a high school chess club to, a Fortune 500 company. Why are DAOs used? Or rather, who uses DAOs, right? Why are DAOs used? Because they're just easier. Ease of use and compliance. Sometimes, in some use cases, they're just better. That's a fine reason. And who uses DAOs? Well, a lot of people, 5 million members across 10,000 DAOs with $10 billion in assets. So DAOs can no longer be ignored. And why did DAOs matter? The reason they matter is because they're trustless. It doesn't rely on this brittle foundation. And so DAOs are to organizations like crypto is to money. It's trustless. And the simplicity of these answers is why this definition is the right definition for DAOs, the one we can communicate to the world. And that's really important because we know, if we're here, that we're pioneers. And we know that DAOs are more than just, a new way to draw up some docs, right? We know that DAOs, when they're trustless, have the potential to create a more open, free society, a grassroots society, where we can all work together across arbitrary political boundaries. Now, there are problems. right? So one is indecision. This is not an instant panacea. One is indecision. Like, it is hard to get a lot of people to agree. There's social drama across and apathy in large groups. So that's something we have to figure out how to overcome. There's tooling, right? We need software for accounting, for project management that's redone for DAOs. There's code that can be problematic and is not yet battle tested and mature, and so we've seen hundreds of millions stolen in exploits. That's a problem. And there's regulation, because if membership in DAOs are transferable, then they can be traded, and that could potentially implicate securities laws in certain situations. And by the way, lawyers still don't understand all these issues. There's very few that do. And finally, the rules we use can be bad, right? DAOs, code on the blockchain needs to have a way to update itself, right? Like, if we couldn't update the Constitution, we'd still have slavery. And code needs to incorporate human discretion instead of removing it, right? I mean, just look what mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines have done to incarceration rates in the US. So there's a lot of problems. And I've grappled with these for a few DAOs. So I am the co-founder and CEO of Shipyard Software. We build specialized decentralized exchanges. We saw that in most DEXs, retail was subsidizing and paying fees for liquidity that actually really only benefited whales. And so we created a specialized decentralized exchange with the best prices for trades under $50,000. And we created a DAO for it called Admiral DAO. It's incorporated in the Marshall Islands. We did it with the help of my DAO. It's been a great experience. And I'm also the founder of FAB, the Foundation for Art and Blockchain, which is a 501c3 nonprofit and a DAO that supports artists and NFTs. But I've also seen the traditional side of entities in the traditional economy. I'm on the board of a regulated stablecoin company, GMO, which issues GN, a yen-backed stablecoin. I've been a venture investor at FJ Labs and Bessemer Venture Partners. I've sold a Web2 company, and I did my MBA and BA at Harvard. And out of these experiences and contrasting them with DAOs, I think that DAOs are the most important thing to come out of blockchain. I think they will change the way all corporations work. But here's the thing. DAOs can exist in the ether, but their people don't, right? So DAOs don't need laws in order to operate, but if they don't follow them, their members can face penalties, right? And DAOs, they don't need bank accounts, but if they don't have them, it's pretty hard to operate. And there's just a lot of problems. Like, it's hard to run a DAO with a lot of people. If we don't engage experienced executives, then we're just not going to do a good job. People have whole careers learning to do things. And so that's why when we talk about DAOs as a revolution, it's a problem because it alienates the very people we need to incorporate and engage so that we can actually make DAOs the next stage in human evolution and create the society we want to see. And so that's why I really want to encourage the community to focus and articulate as DAOs as an evolution in human organization, not a revolution. Now, there are a lot of skeptics who say, why would you need to have a DAO when you could use a company? And I think if we really want to engage them, we need to invert the question. Say, why would you want to use a company when you could use a DAO, right? And the answer is in front of us. It's situations like FTX, right? So in the Wall Street Journal today, I wrote an op-ed saying that centralization was the problem behind FTX. But another solution to the problem would be the rules and governance on the blockchain. So we could have it encode in code, and we couldn't see what John Ray, the new CEO, described as the worst failure of corporate controls in his entire career, and he was at Enron, right? And so this is why it's like, why would you do a company that wasn't also a DAO? And there's just a host of reasons. Like, why would you pay thousands of dollars to a lawyer when you could copy and paste code? Why would you go to a notary when you could sign with your wallet? Like, these are just big pains. There's no reason that companies shouldn't be DAOs. And so in the future, it's going to be like having a company that's not a DAO is going to be like riding a horse on the highway. It's going to be like using a flip phone, It's going to be, scanning a Polaroid to post on Instagram. It's like cute, but kind of anachronistic. And that's the pitch we need to explain to the traditional world to engage them, right? Because at the point where there's 330 million traditional entities in the world, corporations, and all of those should be partially DAOs in the future, right? It's just people are going to realize that if they don't get on the train, they're going to get left behind. And that's how we engage them. And so this is important again because we all see that DAOs can be the next stage in human organizational evolution. That's the step we're taking together in the 21st century. And that's especially important because as societies become increasingly complex, they tend to either flourish and adapt and evolve, or they collapse. And so that's the message that we need to take to the rest of the world to engage them, is to evolve, right? Not to revolt. Because we need to stand on the shoulder of giants and engage people in the past so that we can make DAOs everything that we want them to be and that we know they can be. And we should do that not just for our benefit, but for everyone's benefit. So thank you, and if you want to learn more, you can follow me at Mark Lurie on Twitter or Shipyard SW. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.